Welcome to Houston Sports Talk with your host, Robert Land.
Thanks for checking into the best Houston sports podcast, part of the Bleav Network. And joining me for Texans conversation and to preview the Chiefs game is our friend Garrett Williams, who you guys know as Houston Stressans on YouTube, X, IG, and TikTok. Happy holidays, Garrett. Super pumped you could stop by and gift us with a little Texans knowledge.
I appreciate you, Robert, as always. I enjoyed being on your show last time. I enjoy your content, and happy holidays to you as well.
Definitely blessing during the holidays for sure.
That's right.
The Texans defense has shown they can be blessing. They look elite if they don't give up the chunk plays. Look what they did to Josh Allen, Tua, and Jared Goff, Garrett. And I'm half joking, but is there any chance the Texans can use the old Trent Dilfer Ravens plan to a Super Bowl and just lock it down on D and not turn the ball over?
I mean, honestly, this is something I've kind of been onto, but, the whole situation around this team, like dating back to last year, just like from a fan's perspective, in my opinion, our expectations this year were kind of jaded based off last year. We kind of saw the inverse. We kind of saw mediocre defense with pretty good offense. So going into this year, given how we played last year and then with all the offseason acquisitions, everyone, assumed that it would be another similar blueprint where the offense carried the team and the defense kind of just, did okay. But we've learned throughout this year, to our surprise, for some of us, that the defense is actually the star of the show and that the offense is the one that is all they have to do is just the status quo. And I'm totally fine with it. The more that I've kind of grasped my head around that, the more comfortable I feel about this team being a contender. And I think another big part of that too is, we have to remember DeMeco Ryans is the defensive-minded head coach. And so a lot of that trickles down to how the game plays out, in my opinion. All the conservative stuff that we see that we get frustrated with, kicking field goals, punting, not going forward on fourth down. Once I realized that, DeMeco Ryans is a defensive-minded trickle down, it looks like I lost my connection. Not sure if you can hear me. It does make it a little easier to take, when you consider that perspective.
Yeah, and as long as we hear him, we're going to try to keep going with this. Is there anything you want to see differently offensively? I'd like to see Dalton Schultz being used less in blocking schemes, both in run and pass situations. Let's see what new tight end Irv Smith can do. Why not?
Yeah, and, I saw that Irv Smith had a pretty good game blocking, and he kind of got forced into the lineup. So it could be one of those situations where it's a blessing in a disguise. You kind of get forced into a situation and learn about somebody when you probably wouldn't have otherwise. But I'm definitely with that. I'm sure you would agree the injury to Brevin Jordan was a huge loss to this team. I feel like it hasn't been talked about enough, primarily in blocking like you highlighted. So I am all for trying things to improve this offense because they definitely have had their struggles. And to your point, blocking at tight end is definitely one of them. So that was something nice to see. And then obviously he was also thrusted in because Cade Stover had the emergency appendectomy. So hopefully he's back, but I like that idea.
Yeah, and Cade Stover not exactly all world as a blocker either. And just wanted to see somebody that can block when you have an offensive line that's struggling that much. You just want to see somebody that can help them out a little bit. And Ogunbowale, to me, is a little bit maybe overrated by the Texans coaching staff as a run blocker. He's not that good. And it really hurts that your run blocking is terrible, both from the offensive line and then from the auxiliary positions. And speaking of running back, Dameon Pierce, I believe it's just 15 carries this year. It's long past due to try somebody else with that roster spot because it's obviously have zero confidence in Pierce right now. Why not pull up J.J. Taylor from the practice squad and at least give him a shot? He's looked good when he's had a chance in the preseason and the regular season.
Yeah, he has. And then a name that I've liked, and I don't know if he's back from his injury, but is Jawhar Jordan, the rookie we drafted, I believe, in the 6th round out of Louisville. That would be nice to see. But, you do bring up a good point. You look at, successful offenses like the Detroit Lions, they got a pretty good 1-2 punch. Obviously, that's really two good backs there, but it's worked so far as Joe Mixon being a bell cow, but it does worry you down the stretch if you continue to kind of lean on him too much, or, you've seen it in a couple games this season where he's not as effective, whether it be from the blocking or maybe it's just not his day. It is nice to kind of have another back, obviously one to kind of give him a breather, but two, maybe a different style or pace of running the ball. But I agree. Dameon Pierce, I don't know if they just don't trust him or he hasn't been effective, but I would like to see another back in the mix to see what it can do to help the offense.
The offensive line allowed the second fewest pressures on the season versus the Dolphins. Garrett, how did Tytus look at left guard compared to the Juice Scruggs experience? And what do you think of Blake Fisher's performance?
So I haven't really dove in too much, but like at the surface from being at the game live and briefly watching some highlights and recapping, Tytus held up well. And especially, him coming off of little to no time to prepare. I do wonder, since this was the bye week and the decision was made during the bye week before the game that Tytus would be at left guard. I know they didn't announce it until a couple days prior. I wonder if he had time to prepare himself or if it really was forced last minute based off the news of Kenyon Green not making it. I suspect it's a little bit of both. So, but still, it's very impressive. I've been vouching for this lineup for the O-line, since the Kenyon Green injury in the Jets game. To me, my logic was this was the closest resemblance of the offensive line that played the majority of the games last year that was infinite amount better than this year's O-line. You have Laramie Tunsil at left tackle, obviously, but you had Tytus Howard at left guard. You had Jarrett Patterson at center, Shaq Mason at right guard. And last year you had George Fant at right tackle, but now you just replace him with Blake Fisher. I think Blake Fisher did well too. That was a critique of people of this O-line was, it's too much of a gamble to put a rookie out there. I would counter, you drafted him high in the NFL draft, I believe this late second round. That means you have confidence in him. People are judging his ability based off a limited sample size. I feel like he hadn't really had enough reps for us to even really know what he had in him. So with that being said, I thought he played great. And like you mentioned, it was the fewest amount of pressures we had given up all year. And this was a pretty good Dolphins defensive line, especially their interior. CJ Stroud said it post-game. He thinks it's one of the best interior defensive lines that they have played all year. That says a lot, having played teams like the Jets come to mind with the great interior defensive line. So I think Tytus held up well, and I think Fisher did well too. And, if that's how good they played, you would think that would be the bottom of where they are, and we'd only project up. So this has got me very excited.
Yeah, Fisher got beat bad at the end of the game. That was the one really bad snap that he had, I thought. There was another sack that Stroud took, and it was Fisher's guy, but Stroud was trying to escape from the pocket and basically put that guy back into place. So that wasn't Fisher's fault particularly. And then with Tytus, there was a sack given up in the interior, but it was very odd. I don't know if you caught this sack, Garrett, but we talked about it in our post-game show, how there was 6 guys for the Texans, including Ogunbowale, and somehow they got 2 guys in, and I think one of them might have been Fisher's guy, but the other, and a big issue was that Tytus got knocked off the defensive guy because the guy that Patterson was blocking sort of, I don't know, somehow they crashed into each other, the defensive guy, and then Tytus got knocked down. So it was real odd, but I just, I'm like, why not give us Blake Fisher and Tytus out? Let's put the 5 most talented guys. We know that Juice Scruggs and Kenyon Green are not one of the 5 most talented offensive line. You drafted a guy in the second round with Blake Fisher as a tackle that should be pretty good. So why not draft a guy like him? And it's going to be a big one, Garrett, because Saturday, the inside pressure from, what you're going to get with the Chiefs, Chris Jones is no joke. Stroud talked about during the presser that Chiefs interior line is one of the better ones that they're going to see. So this is a perfect test for these guys inside and what Tytus and Jarrett and obviously Shaq Mason can do on the interior.
Yeah, I'm optimistic, but to your point on that sack, I believe it was one of the first drives of the game on the offense. And that's something I feel like we've seen far too often. I feel like it's a flaw in the actual pass protection itself, where we have, an undersized Dare Ogunbowale running back blocking a rusher on the interior. It seems like we like to block things from outside to in as opposed to inside out, essentially having Dare block an edge rusher as opposed to a guy in the interior. So that wasn't a great one. So I do agree on that. And then the philosophy of the O-line, I think we're on the same page. You might have taken a step back at right tackle by moving Howard, who was playing pretty good at right tackle, to left guard. and dropped off by playing Fisher there, but you got markedly better at left guard. And so it's more so about the collective whole net benefit to me than it is, each position. And to your point, it's about playing the best 5 guys. And I think that's how they made that decision. I know DeMeco has referenced that before. And to your point about the Chiefs and Chris Jones and their interior, I think he is probably their biggest issue. Their edge rushers, I don't really fear as much as guys that we've played against. And, I'm confident. I think Landry Locker, I think I might have saw a tweet from him earlier today where he shared the last time that Tytus Howard went up against Chris Jones, he graded pretty well via PFF. I think it was mid to high 70s. So, it's a small sample size, but I think, and Laramie Tunsil too, when he was interviewed about the game and the new line, he was excited to have Tytus back by his side. So there is something to say about that chemistry with Tytus and Laramie right there at left guard and left tackle. And then also Patterson. The 3 of them right there have all basically played a good majority of last year together. So there's that chemistry off the bat. It'll be a big test, no doubt, but this is the best I've felt about our O-line all year.
And I apologize also for all you watching this on YouTube that you're getting a big mug of me in this one. We miss Garrett's mug on the screen. I want to get into this.
That is my fault, not your fault, Robert.
I want to get into this matchup in 30 seconds, but just want to remind everybody, if you enjoy Houston Sports Talk, tell your friends about us, share our links on your social media. Our live Texans post game for the Chiefs game will be Sunday afternoon instead of after the Chiefs game. So keep an eye out for the notifications to see the live version of that. And tomorrow, Astros analyst, him as Astros future Jimmy Price, joins me to talk about that Kyle Tucker trade and much more regarding the Astros. Don't forget to give us a quick thumbs up. And of course, if you haven't done so, subscribe on YouTube and listen on the go with your favorite podcast app. All right, Garrett, let's play a little Would You Rather. Would you rather see what the Texans defense looks like against Mahomes, or would you rather get a giant helping of Carson Wentz on Saturday?
I want Mahomes, man. I mean, I already know how this narrative is going to be, like just, following along all year. I understand, like, internally a lot of fans are frustrated. I totally get it. But, on the outside, like, we're not getting any respect. And I already know if we play Wentz and we win by 30, 40, win by 3, no matter – it's a lose-lose from the public perspective's eye. We take care of business and they'll discredit us. Which, I kind of like it that way. So that way we can kind of come in flying under the radar come playoffs. But I really want us to play Mahomes I think we can beat them regardless of whether he plays or not. But I would love to play them and beat them with Mahomes to kind of prove where we stand and kind of insert ourselves back into that contender realm in the national eye. But like I mentioned, it may not be the worst thing for us to beat a Carson Wentz-led Chiefs team and go in under the radar. But I definitely think – I tweeted this out earlier today, and I've been thinking this. If I'm the Chiefs, there's no way in heck that I'm starting Patrick Mahomes on a bum ankle, whether he's good or not. It was already probably an area of concern for them in this game. They probably have the worst tackle duo in the league, and it's been pretty bad as of late, going against probably the best edge rushing duo in the league and Will Anderson Jr. and Danielle Hunter. So you couple that with a less mobile Patrick Mahomes, that could, be a cause for concern for some further injury. So I highly doubt we see him, but I hope we do.
Would you rather see a new offensive coordinator for the Texans in the offseason or a new O-line coach replacing Strausser?
Oh, that's got to be O-line coach for sure. I mean, I know Slowick has had his struggles and criticisms. I've been a defender of his all year. About mid to halfway through the year, I kind of, fed into it a little bit, but have never really been fully on board like the rest of the public. It does take time. He's a young coordinator, a young system. People talk about a sophomore slump for CJ Stroud. In my opinion, it's more of a sophomore slump for Bobby Slowick. I feel like people have adjusted to his play calling, and he has yet to kind of adjust back. I do have confidence in him. And then a change too. I don't know if that would be the best thing overall. Offensive line, the issues we've seen all year, in my opinion, they all point back to coaching, which can ultimately go to Slowick, but specifically in technique and scheme, it's got to be Strausser. And the thing about this scheme too is what's mind-blowing. Seth Payne has pointed this out quite a bit, is Strausser is coaching a scheme that he has never coached before. So not only are the players learning it, but the coach is learning how to coach the scheme to the players. So to me, that makes zero sense. So you got to let him go with how poorly this O-line has played. and you got to get someone who knows is a master of this scheme to replace him.
Yeah, the communication issues, it's just nonstop. And if that doesn't change, that seems to be on the offensive coordinator, because the offensive line has changed. We've seen different guys in there, and we've seen some of the same issues. My big issue with Bobby Slowik is, more than anything, I'm just not happy with how he uses the personnel that he's got. You have to understand, Dalton Schultz is not a good run blocker. You're making yourself a worse team if you have him run blocking or even pass blocking, which they have him do far too often. It's just stuff like that. It's, how he's using Joe Mixon at times, where you want to see him maybe vary a little bit more. He'll get caught running inside a lot or running outside. And, sometimes it's the zone, and sometimes, it's like they can't quite pick a lane. And when they do pick the lane, it's often the wrong lane. That's the way I feel about it.
I agree. That's probably my biggest gripe too. It's not the play calling, but it's the utilization of his personnel. And, I get, if you know a certain scheme, you have to stay within certain bounds to do that. But I think he has adjusted lately. And one of my biggest things I've been calling for is to pass to open the run, as opposed to run to open the pass. Given our personnel, we have a quarterback who can throw it in a spread out type offense. We have an O-line personnel that does not fit our current scheme. Like, they're more of, gap scheme, mauler type guys, but now we're trying to get them to be finesse and zone blocking and out in space and getting them to think too much. So that's been my big gripe too, is maybe I can, justify it for X amount of weeks, 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks. But like, at a certain point when it's not working, you have to realize, okay, I got to quit being stubborn and adapt here a little bit. To me, that's like for a young guy, like, it comes off as like an old school coach who says, I'm going to run this scheme and this type of play no matter what. It's like, you got to adapt to what you have,
I don't know what's going on with this, Garrett, but one of my criticisms, and I saw it again in this last game, on these short yardage plays, when you do decide to pass, it seems like they're long developing. CJ doesn't hit somebody on a quick play. You have Tank Dell, you got John Mechie, you got Nico Collins. These guys should be able to make a quick cut, and you can hit them really fast on a slant. Or we still don't see too many slants. We don't see much over the middle. And I don't know if it's CJ's not comfortable with it, or Slowik's just not calling those type of plays, but those are the type of plays that you want them to run on these short yardage, not these ones where he's got to wait for guys to get open when you've got an offensive line that's not that good and you got a defense that's all jammed up inside.
I agree. I tend to think that it's both. I think it's Slowik dialing up plays with only so many answers, like 2-3-man routes that are all deep options. And I think also at times it is CJ being greedy. He likes to hit the home run. So, but to me, that goes back to coaching and the coach's room.
Yes.
You need to let him know, or even just when you call the play, say, hey, be aware of the down and distance here. Like, it doesn't hurt to get a subtle reminder, say, hey, hit the check down if you need it. So little stuff like that can definitely help. But I think it's a combination of the two. I would lean more so of the play calling with Bobby. And like, to your point, like, one of my favorite concepts is the mesh concept, where you get basically 2 under drag routes where they kind of cross each other. And if it's man coverage, it's almost always open. If it's zone coverage, they can sit down. But yeah, part of it too is CJ. He has that, home run hitter mindset. But to me, that falls back on coaching still.
One more. Would you rather see a lot more of the Texans running game these last few weeks and practice for the old school kind of cold climate playoff football in January, or would you rather see the new O-line work more on gaining that chemistry in the passing game?
Based off of what we saw with this new O-line from one game, I thought they did pretty well in the pass game, and the run game did not do as good. And given your point about heading into the playoffs where the run game is paramount, I would say run game. And then, if we get a dominant run game, dominant run blocking these last couple of weeks of the season, that can also set up the pass. That's kind of what Slowik wants to do. We saw it last year. A lot of these runs can be frustrating up the middle for, 0 to negative yards, but it does set up these big shot plays for us. So I'll say run game for sure.
All right, tough question for you here. I want to give you 6 AFC head coaches in the playoffs right now besides DeMeco Ryans. And you tell me which one of these 6 will DeMeco out-coach? Andy Reid, Mike Tomlin, Jim and John Harbaugh, Sean Payton, and Sean McDermott?
Oh, man, that's tough. Well, he already outcoached Sean McDermott once this year, so I'll take that one off the list. I'll say Sean Payton. Sean Payton, he's a good coach, but I also kind of don't like his personality. He kind of rubs me the wrong way from time to time, but he would definitely be able to out game plan him. And I think he could hang with a lot of those guys. It would be interesting to see an Andy Reid. We've seen him versus Harbaugh. That game was a lot closer than what a lot of us remember. So I think he can hang with him as well. But for sure, I would say Sean Payton.
What's your gut feel going into this Chiefs game? Do you feel like they can take this one, or is it we're just kind of waiting for the Patrick Mahomes shoe to drop, I guess?
I think we can win either way. And like I said, I really want him to play and us to beat them with him. And something DeMeco Ryans is very aware of and has talked about is he specifically has stated, like, the way to beat the Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jacksons of the league is to do it with a four-man rush, to win with your D-line without blitzing. And he went out this offseason and made acquisitions according to that philosophy and getting Danielle Hunter and Nico Autry. We have seen, in recent weeks with a healthy defense that he's been able to back off the blitz and start to only rush four and drop in coverage. If you get home with only four or less, it's almost impossible for any quarterback, much less Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes. So with that being said, we alluded to it earlier. The Chiefs, it's kind of odd. They have a really good interior line, but a really bad exterior line in their tackles. I think the advantage we have there is massive. And through that alone is the deciding factor that makes me confident to win that game.
He's at Texas Commenter on X, the website, HoustonStressans.com. Where else can they go to look for your content, Garrett? Plug away.
Yeah, so at Texans Commenter on pretty much every social media, on Twitter, on TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, on Instagram, I'm at Houston Stressans. Like you mentioned, my website, HoustonStressans.com. I'm having a watch party this Saturday for the Chiefs-Texans game at Tejas Brewery. Anyone and everyone is welcome, friends, family. We'll have giveaways. We'll be doing a live stream as well, selling merch, all that good stuff. So I would love to see y'all out there.
Man, that sounds fun. And just my last thought going into the next 8 days is the Texans, they got to somehow stay healthy. 3 games in an 11-day window. It's about as condensed an NFL schedule that we'll ever see, Garrett. Be especially careful with Mixon and Nico. Be careful with those guys.
I agree. So this is a tough place for us because right now we're in the 4 seed with, possibility of moving to the 3 seed. 2 seed is pretty much not likely. The Bills would have to lose 2 out of 3 to 3 terrible teams. So that being said, you're kind of locked in and you kind of have the dilemma of the rest versus rust theory and, staying sharp. But that's going to be a tough balancing act for DeMeco and the Texans.
Yeah, my concern is also Derek Stingley. 3 games in 11 days for a guy that has soft tissue injuries, and we feel like we got to have him out there for every single down. I mean, that's a big deal.
Yeah, that's a good point. And, he's also shadowing guys too. So, that's a really good point. I haven't thought about that.
Man, thanks for doing this, and looking forward to talk to you again, and looking forward to some W's here on holiday weekend.
I appreciate it, and I apologize for the technical difficulties to you and the audience. Hopefully you'll have me back on soon. I can make it up to you and be in my actual studio and have everything working the way it should be. But I really appreciate you and all that you do for Houston fans, and enjoy the show and encourage you to keep it up.
No problem. Astros tomorrow, Texans postgame on Sunday. Stay with us, guys. Take care.